Listening to OTR-FM, part of the IOM radio network.
IPMNation.com.
Tonight on Unleashed, it's a historic broadcast, as this is the very first ever live show on the new OMTimes Radio Premium channel, OTR-FM, on the IOM Radio Network. Very excited about that. And tonight we have a great guest, Daryl W. Perry, talk show host and Libertarian candidate for president, will be joining us. And I'll probably have something to say about the Republican debate, which is still going on at this very moment. But it is November 10th, 2015, just after 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. And Matt Connarton Unleashed starts now.
Audio sequence starts. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey. Welcome, everybody. It's a historic night. This is the very first live broadcast on the brand new OTR-FM on IOM Radio Network, the new premium channel on the OMTimes Radio Network, OTR-FM. I'm very, very flattered and honored and excited to be the very first live show on the new network. So this is very, very cool. So thank you to OMTimes. Thank you to all of you, my loyal listeners, and everybody who helps make this show possible. And I'm really grateful to OMTimes for this opportunity to be on, again, the very first show on OTR-FM, the new premium channel on IOM Radio Network. So this is exciting. And of course, don't forget, I'm not forgetting our loyal IPM Nation listeners as well. And honored to have all of you with me. And we have a great guest who's going to be coming up in the second segment, Daryl W. Perry. He is a libertarian candidate for president. He's also himself a talk show host. He's got, I actually originally ran across Daryl on, he's a frequent contributor on a show called Free Talk Live, a nationally syndicated show. It's on over 150 radio stations across the U.S., and we carry them on IPM Nation. And Daryl has another show, a newer show, which is his own, called Peace, Love, Liberty. So we'll talk about that tonight. And we're going to talk about his candidacy and whatnot. I did yesterday on the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed. I did officially endorse Daryl W. Perry for president. And with my endorsement, of course, always comes the hope and wish that my endorsement do the candidate in question more good than harm. So hopefully that will be the case. I don't wish to do anyone harm. I wish to help. I only want to help. I'm a helper, not a hinderer. Hopefully, I hope to help, not hinder. How's that? That'd be a good campaign slogan for somebody. Vote for me. I hope to help, not hinder. So I really should. I should be working on a campaign somewhere. But Daryl will be joining us after the break. But in the meantime, I will of course remind you we are taking your calls tonight. We do have an open phone line if you'd like to. If you have a question or comment for me, for Daryl, for both of us about anything else. Of course, there is a Republican debate, which I think is still in progress. I don't know. I've been here in the studio for the last few minutes, so I'm not sure if that's still going on. It may or may not. Well, it's after 11 if you're listening live, so it's probably over by now. So, we could talk about that. We could talk about anything you want. The phone line, if you would like to call in, is 617-417-4IPM. That's IPM as in IPM Nation. 617-417-4IPM. Or if you prefer to be numeric, 617-417-4476. I like to be alphanumeric. but to each his or her own. We won't judge in true libertarian fashion. We won't judge. Did get to see a little bit of the Republican debate, and actually a pretty good chunk of it. It's interesting to notice who is conspicuous by his absence. Chris Christie, of course, got kicked off the main stage, and he's back to being an opening act, along with the other also rans. But I'll tell you who did impress me tonight and who continues to impress me from what I saw is John Kasich. As I posted on Facebook, Ohio Governor John Kasich continues to be, among this particular crowd, to me personally, the least repulsive. I think that's what they mean when they say damning with faint praise. He is I would also call him perhaps the least insane, the least unacceptable of the bunch. I liked, if you didn't see it, it's worth seeing. He really kind of, Trump was doing his usual thing. We're going to kick out all the illegals and we're going to build this big fancy wall and all this pie in the sky stuff. You're not going to round up 11 million people and deport them. And by the way, anybody who knows anything about history should be creeped out anytime anyone starts talking about rounding people up anyway. But, John Kasich was right on him, said this is fantasy stuff. You're not going to round up all these people. And he played the compassion card and said, when you talk about sending people home, deporting them, you're talking about breaking up families. And that's not compassionate, and that's not what America's about. And I could not agree more. And I was impressed, by the way. Not only did John Kasich say that and drew applause from the crowd, but Jeb Bush, and I'm not a Jeb fan, but the one of the few things that I will credit Jeb Bush with is he has stuck to his guns on immigration and immigration reform, and he's not backed down from that at all. And he has said, he continues to say, as he did tonight, kind of siding with Kasich on this. We need to find a path to citizenship for these people, and we can't just be trying to boot everybody out. It doesn't work. And I like that, and I like his forthrightness on that. And when he said what he said, he also drew applause, and I didn't really notice any boos. And in the past, it's like if you try to say anything suggesting that we should treat undocumented immigrants as though they're, actual human beings, deserving of some level of some modicum of dignity and respect. If you treat them like that and have any concern about what you're doing to their families when you start shipping people home and all that, these people in these crowds at the Republican debates would boo and hiss and, oh, you're for amnesty, even though they've taken the word amnesty and twisted it to mean something that it doesn't. I liked, by the way, in fact, that reminds me, Kasich evoked Reagan and said, gave credit to Reagan how he handled it when he said, the people who are here, if they're law-abiding people, they can stay, and we'll figure out a way to make it work. And I think I'm encouraged by the lack of boos and the amount of applause when these statements are made by people like John Kasich and Jeb Bush. I mean, when, I don't give Rick Perry credit for much of anything, but when former Texas Governor Rick Perry, when he ran back in 2012, or actually it would have been in 2011 during one of the Republican debates, when he was talking about in Texas how they give in-state tuition to children of undocumented immigrants, and he said, look, you just don't have a heart if you don't believe that these kids should have a chance just like everyone else. And they booed him. But I didn't hear any boos on that tonight. So that's good. That's encouraging, because anyone who knows me, I mean, I'm pretty much full on open borders at this point. You're not going to build a wall. We're never going to do it. There's reasons, and we won't get into it right now because we're going to run up against a break in a couple of minutes, but there's all kinds of political reasons why that will never happen. And of course, the idea of deporting 11 million people, not only is it immoral and unethical, in my opinion, to do that, but it's fantasy land stuff. I mean, seriously, if you really believe you're going to deport 11 million undocumented immigrants, while you're at it, we all ought to think about adopting a pet unicorn, and then we can go colonize Jupiter. it's never going to happen, and it's fantasy talk. So, and when Trump talks about, Trump takes it to an interesting level when he talks about not only are we going to build a wall, but we're going to get Mexico to pay for it. Very, very interesting. So I don't know. I hear they've got the debate on in the other room, and I hear applause. So I guess the debate is still going on at 11:14 p.m. So I'll have to watch the rest of it later. And then probably on Thursday night's show, we can get a little bit more in depth. But I'll tell you what, I one observation, and again, we're going to come up against a hard break in a minute, but I didn't see Trump really do anything too impressive. He tends to be the standout at these debates, more for his attitude and whatnot than anything he says in terms of substance. But I didn't see him land any really big punches just from what I've seen so far tonight. So I don't know. We shall see. What we're going to do is we're going to take a break. And when we come back, Darryl W. Perry, the great Darryl W. Perry, my candidate for president. Well, I guess he's got to win the Libertarian nomination first. I don't know. We'll talk about that. We'll see how it goes. But again, thank you so much for being here with me on this historic broadcast. Again, the very first live show on OMTimes Radio's new premium channel, OTR FM, on the IOM Radio Network. And of course, as always, my loyal listeners on IPM Nation as well, and viewers, because we also have the TV edition of Unleashed, which is up and available right now on YouTube and Vimeo, by the way. So always a lot going on. I'm a very busy man. But we'll be right back, and we'll talk to Darryl in just a couple of minutes. So stick with me. More Unleashed coming up. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton, Unleashed. We are live on this Tuesday evening. And of course, as I mentioned before, the very first live broadcast on the new OTR FM on the IOM Radio Network. And of course, we're live on IPM Nation as well. And now joining us is Darryl W. Perry. Darryl, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on, Matt.
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you. And, you and I have never really spoken before tonight, but I've been aware of you for a while. Of course, I hear you on Free Talk Live, and you have your great new show, the Peace, Love, Liberty, which we've added to IPM Nation starting this week, and very excited about that. And I don't know if you heard, but on my television show yesterday, I did officially endorse you for president with the hope and wish that it do you more good than harm.
I did not hear that, but thank you very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, let me ask you about that first. How does that work? So you're running officially as a libertarian, correct?
Yes. So the Libertarian Party, the way they do their nomination is the way the Republicans and Democrats should do theirs, because political parties are private entities. So the Libertarian Party, there are a couple of states that, because of ballot access, whatnots, there will be Libertarian Party primaries, but they are non-binding. So when the voters in North Carolina on March 15th get to vote in the Libertarian Party presidential preference primary, it's a non-binding vote. The people that make the decision are the delegates that go to the National Convention. The Libertarian Party National Convention is taking place in Orlando over Memorial Day weekend. I believe it's the Rosen Center is the name of the hotel where that's taking place. So anybody that's a member of the Libertarian Party and is chosen as a delegate by their state party, and I don't think there has ever been a convention where all of the delegate seats have been filled. So if you're interested in being a delegate, it's going to be very easy to wind up being a delegate. You join the party, that costs $25. Contact your state and say, hey, I want to be a delegate and I can afford to go to Orlando. And pretty much they will say, okay, good, we'll put you on the list.
Interesting.
So it's going to be the people that show up that vote. And there's a token system that is used to get people into the debate that will happen the night before the nomination. And that debate will wind up being broadcast by C-SPAN. Or at least in years past it has been, and we anticipate that it will be again next year.
Sure. So you don't know ahead of time then who will be in the debate. Is that correct?
That's correct. We can probably speculate based on which candidates are actually going out doing stuff. But 2 years, or rather 3.5 years ago in the 2012 election, there were only two candidates in the pre-nomination debate. That was Gary Johnson and Lee Rice. And before 2012, the tokens that were given to the candidates could then be transferred. Mm-hmm. So a candidate could say, I already have enough tokens, give it to somebody else. But they implemented in 2012 non-transferable tokens. So after you wind up getting the number of tokens, you can't then say, no, give this to somebody else. That becomes your token. So that was designed, from what I've heard, it was implemented and designed to make sure that it was only, like the one or two most popular candidates that got in the debate. Oh. Because, well, we don't want anybody that's kind of wacky being in our debate. But that's the wonderful thing about not being a Republican or a Democrat, is that we're all a little bit kind of wacky. Even within the Republican and Democratic Party, and apparently there was a Republican debate earlier tonight that I didn't watch at all.
Yeah.
But some of those people are kind of wacky. One of them happens to be leading in the polls right now because he sounds like everybody's drunk uncle.
Well put. Have you run for office before?
I have. I've run for municipal office. I've run for a couple of state-level offices. In 2004, I was recruited to be the state treasurer candidate for the Pennsylvania Libertarian Party. Wound up doing almost no campaigning and received more votes than the Constitution Party and Green Party candidates combined.
Okay.
And then a couple of years later, I did a write-in campaign for U.S. Senate in Alabama, and I have no clue how many votes I received because the Secretary of State in Alabama did not actually tabulate the write-in votes the way they're supposed to. But I do know that I got at least 40 votes because I was able to find tally sheets from various municipalities across the state. And there were like 2,000 total write-in votes in that election. So, somewhere between 40 and 2,000.
Have you always run as a libertarian?
Every time I've run for office and been on the ballot, it's been as a libertarian. I have had a couple of write-in campaigns, and write-in campaigns are not on the ballot, and I've got endorsements from other minor parties that are liberty-leaning parties. Yeah. But yes, every time I've been on the ballot, it's been as a libertarian.
Now, do you ever consider running in one of the two major parties, or are you firmly committed to being a libertarian? And I ask that because I know some people who are libertarians, like, our mutual friend Ian Freeman, for example. He is a registered Democrat and has run as such, like when he was challenging for governor, because he feels that it's really difficult to get any sort of traction unless you try to run within one of the two major parties, which is probably why a lot of libertarians, for example, seem to gravitate to the Republican Party, even though they're really libertarians in terms of their ideology and such. Have you ever considered that?
I have never considered that. And the reason why is if you look at the history of the Republican and Democratic parties, the parties ever since, like their creation and they wound up getting elected into government positions, they have done nothing but try to infringe on freedoms. Mm-hmm. And they've grown government. They have never been, there to reduce the size, scope, or power of government. Yes, there are a few people within the Republican Party that are trying to do something, but then they have to go up against the Republican establishment, and the Republican establishment says no, and the Republican establishment puts in primary opponents against them. And, well, because most electoral districts are designed to maintain power for one of the two political parties, it's very difficult to actually make any headway within the Republican or Democratic Party. Plus, the whole history of they're trying to steal my freedoms, so why should I give them any sort of legitimacy by saying, no, they're not really trying to steal your freedom. They're just trying to steal a little bit of it, and here's a little breadcrumb of freedom. So, no, I could never in good conscience call myself a Republican or a Democrat.
It's funny. You mentioned stealing freedoms, and I've always argued that, because a lot of Republicans will tell me that, the Republican Party is protecting your freedom and the Democrats want to take it all away and give everything to the government. But I've always argued that really both of the two major parties want to steal some of your freedoms, and it's really a matter of deciding which ones you want to protect and which ones you're okay with giving up. The Republicans will protect your Second Amendment rights, for example, but your right to marry whoever you want or your reproductive rights, not so sure about those. And
I will say that the Republicans give lip service to wanting to protect your Second Amendment rights and protect other stuff and small government, but yet when it comes to their special interest, such as the largest special interest in the world, the U.S. military, that can never be large enough.
Right.
And the Democrats will give lip service to protecting civil liberties, but when it comes time to actually do anything about it, they generally wind up voting to restrict your civil liberties in the name of equality or something along the lines of, we can't let people do whatever.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. Is this now, so you've run for office before, as we talked about, but is this your first run for president?
Yes. First, and I intend it to be my only.
Okay. Why is that?
It started as one of these sort of dreams in junior high sort of thing, because I remember being told the lie that anybody can be president.
Right.
Daryl, you could be president one day. All right, so let me figure out when I can run. And then after I wound up getting, politically knowledgeable and involved politically, I had always sort of, put it out there. Yeah, I'm going to run in 2016. Yeah. And I don't think people realized that I was serious about it until like the last 2 years. Yeah. So, I've put so much time and energy into it that I don't intend to run at any point in the future for a high-level office. I could probably be talked into it, but, right now I have no intentions of doing high-level office after 2016.
Okay. And so if this is your only run, then if you do happen to win, you'll only serve one term.
Yes.
You're term limiting yourself.
Yes. And part of that has to do with the whole the revenge of, who was it? Revenge of Tecumseh or whatnot. Every president elected in the year divisible by 10 winds up having an assassination or assassination attempt. And, well, that would mean that I'd have to run for re-election in 2020, and I don't want to wind up getting assassinated. Although I dare say that if I got elected in 2016, I would most likely get assassinated by somebody because I want to completely dismantle and abolish the federal government. And the powers that be, they don't want that to happen. They want that federal government to stay there. And I've had people say, well, if you get rid of the federal government, that's anarchy. And then I have to show that, well, no, you would still have the 50 state governments. You would still have I think it's 3,400 county governments.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere around 40,000 municipal governments within there. Oh. You would still have the territorial governments. You would still have all of these other levels of government. So, no, removing one layer of government is not anarchy.
We'll expand on that a little bit, but we got to take a break. We'll be right back, everybody. Stay with us. We're talking with Daryl W. Perry. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of the Inspired Parenting Radio Show, where every week we bring you empowering information from the diverse fields of conscious parenting, education, neuroscience, consciousness, health, and metaphysics to support you in nurturing the best in your children. So if you're interested in understanding what shapes your children's minds, spirits, and hearts, join me every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and prepare to be inspired.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Everybody, Matt Connarton, Unleashed. Again, this is our very first broadcast on the new OMTimes Radio Premium channel. Very, very excited about that. We were chosen for the maiden voyage, if you will, and of course IPM Nation as well. And we're chatting tonight with Daryl W. Perry. And speaking of IPM Nation, Daryl, but I don't want to forget to mention, of course, your show. Peace, Love, Liberty, which starting this week, officially tomorrow, we'll be carrying 3 times a week on IPM Nation. And of course, but the show, how long has the show actually been around?
The show's been around for about 3 years. So tomorrow I record episode 250. And it's transitioned from a weekly radio show on the Liberty Radio Network. Ran on that weekly for about 2 years. And then right after episode 100, I decided to change it up and do the show 3 times a week. So now it's a 30-minute show instead of a 2-hour show. It's more often during the week. So there's still, about the same amount of show being produced weekly. It's just being done a little more often. And I like the new format, especially one of the things that I implemented when I switched it to the 3 times a week is I do a weekly Ask Me Anything. And my thoughts when I started doing this was, people know that I'm into politics. They'll ask me questions about philosophy. Well, boy, was I surprised and was I wrong. I've gotten some incredibly weird questions,
Really?
But my policy is to answer every question that is asked in like a serious manner. So like if the question is like, why are you such a dumbass? I'm not going to answer that question. But I did have a question about how do bees have sex without stinging one another? I did about half the episode just talking about reproduction of bees.
Uh-huh.
There was a question that a listener's daughter sent in. Apparently she got a cold and she was all snotty and nasally, and she's like, where does all this snot come from? So I did like almost an entire show about sinuses and where snot comes from. So tomorrow I've got a question that might interest some people, especially the movie buffs. Which is going to be a better movie, Star Wars The Force Awakens or Warcraft? So I'll spend some time talking about the 2 different movies. I've got a question about can libertarians eat meat, theories of property, and the difference between Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. So those are the questions submitted so far. Generally, I'll take questions until about noon on Wednesday. So if anybody has a question, send that to me, ama@fppradio.com. And because it's episode 250, I'm going to try answering as many questions as possible. Anything that I don't get to will get rolled over to the next Wednesday. And then generally on Mondays and Fridays, I'll talk more, news and give opinions about how things can operate absent government or with less government. And since October 3rd, I've been talking a lot about Kunduz, Afghanistan, and Doctors Without Borders, because I'm sure you're aware the U.S. military bombed a hospital being operated by Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah.
And the U.S. military has come out with like 4 or 5 different excuses now of, well, we didn't know. Oh, it was a mistake. Oh, some system that tells us where things are was down.
Yeah.
And it recently came out that the pilots were actually shooting doctors that were fleeing from the hospital, and they're trying to give Doctors Without Borders hush money. And here, we'll give you money, just shut up. And Doctors Without Borders said no.
Well, it's certainly not a surprise that the U.S. military has been killing civilians when you consider, I'm sure you saw the report that said that they're admitting that 90% of victims of drone strikes overseas were not the actual targets.
Right. And these, for people that aren't aware, these are what they classify as targeted drone strikes.
Right.
So it's something to where we are targeting this specific person, and 90% of the time they don't kill that specific person. Most of the time, they don't even know who they kill.
Right.
They just wind up saying they were an insurgent or they were a suspected terrorist. And the Yemeni government has been super cooperative with the U.S. military and said, yeah, they were terrorists or possibly maybe terrorists. And Yemen has had, I think, 3 different weddings bombed so far.
Wow.
Plus people bombed going to weddings. So, yeah, a lot of civilians getting killed, and U.S. government classifies everybody that's male over the age of, I've heard either 12, 13, or 18 is classified as the suspected terrorist. So you have to really consider, with that very broad definition of terrorist, how are they killing anybody labeled a civilian?
Right. Yeah, they're using and certainly a pretty loose use of the word target. Wow.
Right.
Daryl, what is the FPP radio network exactly?
FPP radio is, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a network.
Oh, okay.
But it's the umbrella under which all of the audio that I produce is released.
Okay.
So there's Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. That is the 30-minute podcast, comes out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. There's the 5-minute newscast that is being produced 7 days a week, has been produced since February of 2014.
Mm-hmm.
Absent, there was a 3-day absence while I was in jail last December. And then the longest running show that I have is the FPP Freedom Minute, which is a weekly 5-minute sort of news commentary podcast. So all of those are released under FPP Radio.
Okay.
FPP is Free Press Publications, and that's the broader umbrella of the media publishing sort of, I call it a media duchy because it's definitely not large enough to be considered a media empire.
Right.
But there's the publications that I do. There's the monthly newspaper. There are print books, a lot of content, like older content that's public domain that's somewhat liberty oriented. I've republished. There's new content, both fiction and nonfiction, that I publish under Free Press Publications. Plus, there's the web-only content as well. So all of that under Free Press Publications, and then FPP Radio is the audio side of FPP.
Daryl, my next question will come as no surprise at all. You're probably expecting me to ask, why were you in jail for 3 days last December?
So in New Hampshire, they will allow you, if the judge refuses to let you do community service in lieu of paying the fine, they will allow you to sit in jail, and they credit your fine $50 a day. Oh. So I had a $162.50 fine, I think it was. And so I sat in jail for 72 hours, and they said, okay, fine's gone away. So the charges that I wound up getting convicted of: operating a vehicle with expired registration. Technically, it's an unregistered vehicle, but the vehicle had been registered. The registration just happened to have expired 2.5 years prior to the ticket. And that's a very long story that I could get into a little bit. The second charge was, and this is the more interesting of the two, believe it or not, I was charged with being a resident of New Hampshire without fulfilling the obligations of residency.
Really?
So in New Hampshire, there's a legal distinction between someone who is domiciled and someone who is a resident. So domicile means, like, I live here. Yes, I live in New Hampshire. I'm an inhabitant of New Hampshire, but I am not a resident of New Hampshire. Resident includes intentions, and one of those intentions is that you intend to be a resident. I do not intend to be a resident, because if you intend to be a resident, there are certain things they want you to do, one of which is to get a piece of plastic from the DMV saying that you can drive a vehicle in New Hampshire. Well, I have a piece of plastic from a DMV in Arizona. That piece of plastic happens to expire on my 65th birthday in the year 2043. So I intend to keep that piece of plastic for as long as I can. I don't wish to claim residency anywhere, but if forced to do so, I will claim it where I have the valid piece of plastic saying that I can drive.
Right.
So they charged me with being the resident, and even though I presented, here's law saying that A resident and an inhabitant is somebody that stays here. Here's another statute that says that if somebody claims residency in another state for any purpose, they are not a resident of New Hampshire. The judge didn't seem to care and said, well, no, guilty.
Yeah.
So I then said, okay, I don't want to pay the fine. Can I do community service? And he said, no, I think that you can pay, so you're going to pay. And I said, all right, well, if you're not going to let me do community service, can I sit in jail? And he said, I'm giving you 30 more days to pay. And I said, so I guess I go to jail in 30 more days. And he said, only if you don't pay, I'm not sending you there. And so basically, he was doing this. You're choosing this for yourself. Like, I'm not doing this to you. You're choosing that.
Right.
So I wound up motioning the court to let me go to jail 3 days earlier. That way I sat over a weekend instead of during the middle of a week. And, I only wound up losing a day of work instead of 3 days of work. But because of the time that I had to go in and when I got out, there was a Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday that I didn't do the newscast.
Oh.
And I couldn't find anybody to write and record the newscast. I found somebody that was willing to record if I wrote, but I couldn't write a newscast while I was in jail.
Gotcha. Daryl, we are out of time. Before we run out of time, though, where should people go online to keep up on what you're doing as far as your presidential campaign and media and anything else?
So for the presidential campaign, DarylWPerry.com. If you can't spell Daryl, and I don't mean to try to insult anybody's intelligence, but there are 7 different ways you can spell Daryl. Yes. And people generally misspell my name all the time. So DWP2016.org is the easy way to remember that. FPP.cc, FPPradio.com for the audio and other writings that I do.
All right. Daryl, thank you so much. We'll let you go. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Matt, thanks for having me.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Well, if that music doesn't get your blood pumping, you're in a coma. Or you're just old and don't like it. Welcome back to Matt Connarton Unleashed. As I hope I didn't offend anyone with that comment. I'm very grateful to everyone for listening, but the show's called Unleashed for a reason. Hey, so again, if you're joining us late, historic broadcast tonight, because this is the very first live broadcast on OTR FM on the IOM Radio Network. The new premium channel just launched, brand new, on OMTimes Radio. So very happy to be chosen for the first broadcast and honored and so forth. So thank you. Thank you for that to OMTimes, and thank you, of course, to everybody who listens to the show. I appreciate it very much. And, of course, you can find us on IPM Nation as well. And also want to mention, too, quick programming note, the television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed, which you can watch live, well, typically live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation. This week's show was pre-recorded, and it's actually already up because tomorrow, Wednesday, is Veterans Day. So happy Veterans Day to all you veterans. My dad, he's a veteran. So happy Veterans Day, Dad, if you're listening. So we did pre-tape the television edition, and it's actually already up. And you can find it on YouTube and on Vimeo on the IPM Nation channels. So please take a look. Dr. Kevin joined me again on this week's show, and we were talking about what's going to be happening on Thursday. Thursday of this week, I will be Dr. Kevin's guest on the Dr. Kevin Show at 6 p.m. Eastern, as I am the second Thursday of every month. We do our thirst-quenching Thursdays, as we call it. And then later on in the evening at 8 p.m. Eastern on Google Hangouts, and we'll post the link and make sure everyone has it. We're going to be doing the very first edition of Intuitive Insights with Dr. Kevin and Matt, and you'll be able to watch us on Google Hangouts. Keep an eye on the Dr. Kevin's Facebook and, of course, the IPM Nation Facebook. We'll make sure everyone has that. And we're also going to stream it on IPM Nation as well, if you just want to listen to the audio. But we hope people watch and participate. This is something where we're really looking for a lot of audience participation. And Dr. Kevin will answer your questions about whatever it is that you need help with. And I will try to guide the process and handle the tech. And I'll probably butt in and be the sarcastic smartass that I am. Dr. Kevin kind of brings that out of me. And if you know what I mean, if you've heard he and I together, or if you've seen us together on the TV show. So we're going to do that once a month. So Intuitive Insights with Dr. Kevin and Matt will be happening once a month at 8 p.m. Eastern. And of course, it'll be the same Thursday of each month that we do the Thirst Quenching Thursdays on the Dr. Kevin Show. So that will be happening this week as well. So wanted to make sure you all are aware of that. And I do want to thank, again, Daryl W. Perry for joining us tonight. That was really interesting to talk to him. He and I had never actually spoken before verbally, with audio. I mean, we've talked on Facebook, of course, and I've been hearing Daryl for a long time on the Liberty Radio Network and on Free Talk Live. And, of course, we have his new show, which just this week is coming to IPM Nation. Well, I shouldn't say his new show. Apparently, it's been around for longer than I realized. He said he's been doing Peace, Love, Liberty for 3 years now, so I had no idea. But it's new to IPM Nation, so we're carrying that starting this week. So very, very happy about that. Let's see. We've got a little bit of time left tonight. Like I was saying earlier, I did get to catch a little bit of the Republican debate tonight, and didn't really see anything too stand out of Trump. I was talking earlier at the top of the show about Jeb Bush, and I had mentioned him. One of the only thing, I was going to say one of the few things, but it's really the only thing I can think of, to be honest with you, about Jeb Bush that has impressed me ever is because I do spend a lot of time ridiculing him. But one of the few things about him that has impressed me is that he has not backed down, really not an inch, on immigration. And it's an issue that I feel passionately about. I to the point that, I mean, I don't even like to refer to the undocumented in this country as illegal immigrants. I don't use the word illegal. I always say there's no such thing as an illegal human being. And I think that there are certain elements politically that use words like illegal or alien to try to sort of collectively dehumanize these people. And it's actually really smart politics. But, or Trump referring to them as rapists or whatever. And I don't agree with that. And I believe in a path to citizenship. You're certainly not going to round them all up and send them home, as I talked about at the top of the show. But I did mention, John Kasich, I thought, had a great moment tonight on this. And he is talking about Trump. He said, we need to discuss this like adults. And because Trump is so wrapped up in this whole wall thing, going to build a wall and get Mexico to pay for it and all that. But again, I mentioned Jeb, and I just saw this pop up on HuffPost. It says here, an immigration fight gives Jeb Bush his best moment of the entire debate season. Let me just read this quickly. This is their analysis of it. It says here, the Republican rift over immigration produced an early clash in Tuesday night's debate. It may have also produced something we haven't seen yet, a strong performance by Jeb Bush. Early on, Donald Trump got a question about immigration and gave his usual response. He'd build a wall, then work on deporting undocumented people already here. Then things got interesting. Ohio Governor John Kasich said Trump's plan was wildly unrealistic because deporting the 11.3 undocumented immigrants was simply not possible. Bush, the former Florida governor, joined the assault, saying that Trump's argument was not merely bad policy, it was also, Bush said, bad politics. Quote, it would send a signal that we're not the kind of country that I know America is. Even having this conversation sends a powerful signal. They're doing high fives in the Clinton campaign right now when they hear this. That's the problem with this, unquote. All right. Before I read the rest of this article, let me interject something. I'm going to give him even more credit here because Jeb tends to be rather clumsy rhetorically in a lot of ways, I've noticed. This was very, very smart. This comment about the signal that the conversation sends and how they're doing high fives in the Clinton campaign right now. Because what he's really saying is, look, I've been harping on it for, literally years now. After the 2012 election when Romney lost, every political strategist I saw on television, Republican political strategists were talking about how the Republican Party needed to find a way to sort of mend the fence with Hispanics in this country and stop talking about wanting to deport people and whatnot, because you cannot win the presidency without the Latino vote, the fastest growing demographic in the United States. And everybody seemed to sort of tacitly agree with that. And then within a matter of months, it was like they had all completely forgotten about it. And then here we are now in the next cycle. The 2016 Republicans, the candidates are talking about, wanting to deport people. And, it's like they completely forgot what happened in 2012. They completely forgot that they need the Hispanic vote. I mean, you've got the front runner, Donald Trump, who's, he's got them calling him a racist. I don't know that it hurts him because the usual rules that apply don't seem to apply with Trump in a lot of ways. But that's a separate conversation to some extent. But so what Jeb is really saying here, without coming right out and saying it, again, I thought this was very, very smart. He's saying, look, just the fact that we're talking like this and debating this, the Clinton campaign they're doing high fives because they know that we're blowing it. Just by having this discussion and talking about building walls and sending people home, we're already blowing it. We don't even have a nominee yet, and we're already handing them a victory because that is who Hispanics are going to vote for. They're going to continue to vote Democrat, and they're going to vote for Hillary Clinton. That's what Jeb is really saying here. And I think that was very, very smart because it's almost like he's saying, look, even if you agree, even if you hate the undocumented immigrants and you want to send them home, think about the political realities of this. So maybe it's time we all just get over it and try to figure out a path to citizenship for these people, because we're not, as Republicans, he's saying, you're not going to win back the White House. Republicans are not going to win back the White House if this rhetoric continues. That's what he's really saying. And I thought that was a very, very smart thing to say. We'll finish this article quickly. Who won the exchange? That's a subjective question, obviously, and it depends on a lot. It depends a lot on what you think about immigration policy. But purely on the merits, Trump's argument was weak. He defended his call for mass deportations by citing Operation Wetback, a mass deportation operation that President Dwight Eisenhower administered in the 1950s. But as HuffPost Elise Foley has noted, those deportations didn't come close to matching the scale of what Trump proposes. Official estimates suggest it resulted in 2.1 million deportations, but many experts believe that number was inflated. Meanwhile, some of the people the government deported were actually U.S. citizens. Again, another example of why, if you know anything about history, whenever we talk about rounding people up and sending them somewhere, that should concern you. All right, we are about out of time, so we'll end with that. There is more to this article. If you want to check it out, it's on HuffPost. It's called An Immigration Fight Gives Jeb Bush His Best Moment of the Entire Debate Season, but I'm sure there is plenty of debate analysis everywhere online. But I don't have time to give you any more of my debate analysis because we're out of time, and I haven't watched the entire debate yet. I got to go back and watch it, so I'm sure it's already posted up on YouTube somewhere. So I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Again, thank you so much to our great guest, Daryl W. Perry. Look for his show on IPM Nation every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Very glad to have him be a part of that family with us. And, of course, thank you again to OMTimes for allowing me to be the maiden voyage, if you will, the very first show on the new premium network. And that's it. We got to go. Tomorrow night's show won't be live, but we'll be back live on Thursday right here.